Hey everybody, I know it's been a while. I've got kids, so sorry for my absence. I also got a new job and then about a year and a half later changed jobs, so I wanted to do a video about job searching in Japan. I recently changed jobs from IT to cybersecurity, which is a perfect segue to introduce today's sponsor, NordVPN. If you guys are job searching or just working remotely at a cafe, you may be susceptible to man-in-the-middle attacks or a compromised router because your local cafe may still use their default credentials on their router. That's why I think you should use NordVPN. It's got some really cool features. Let me show you. So imagine you're remote working and a site you need for your remote work blocks the IP in your country. Well, guess what? This little click, clack, boom, and you're in Japan. If you guys haven't noticed already, this video is sponsored by NordVPN. You can get 4 months free when you sign up for their services via their birthday campaign. Congratulations, you got hired. Now you need to pass sensitive information like your bank account information to HR so you can get paid. If you use NordVPN, even if your data gets intercepted, no one can read it because it's encrypted. Another awesome feature which I think a lot more people should use is a password manager. Nord's password manager will generate passwords for you and save them for specific websites. This way, if someone like me kidnaps you and tries to force you to log into your bank account information, they can't because you don't even know your password. NordVPN can also help attack from many other common cybersecurity attacks like phishing, malware, and DDoS. Things I have learned way too much about at my new job. And hey, job searchers, you don't just have to use NordVPN on your PC, you can also use it on your phone. You can sign up at NordVPN using our link below. Protect your information from creepy guys at a cafe who look like me. For all of you working in public spaces, please use a VPN. I recommend you use NordVPN. Now let's talk about job searching in Japan. How to avoid toxic jobs in Japan. The first sign of a toxic job is tons of overtime. So how do you gauge overtime without doing an interview? Well, there's a couple things you can look for on the job posting. In the job posting, they will sometimes put the average amount of overtime. Another thing is look for overtime built into your contract. It's fairly standard in Japan for overtime to be built into your contract whether you work it or not. And 20 hours is pretty standard. If you see something over 30 hours, I would be very, very careful because they're calculating that based on how much overtime they would expect someone to work. 20 hours is standard. I don't work 20 hours of overtime every week, I'll be honest with you. So you don't have to work all the overtime that's built into your contract, but the more overtime that's built into the contract is probably they think you're going to be doing more overtime. Also be careful because I've heard people have bosses that try to kind of, use that to guilt them into working more overtime because they say, oh, we're already paying you for the overtime, so you should be working more. Again, it's a very standard practice in Japan to have overtime built into your contract. You do not have to do this overtime. It is not mandatory for you to get overtime into your contract. It's just you'll get paid X amount for 20 hours of overtime based on what your wage is, and that you get that whether you work the overtime or not. I don't work 20 hours of overtime a week, but I still get 20 hours worth of overtime just because that's how my contract is built. It's a way that you can gauge how much overtime the company may expect you to work. So the next thing I would look at is the holidays and time off. The first thing you want to do is make sure you don't work for a company that requires you to work on Saturdays. Sadly, there are a lot of companies in Japan that still require 6-day work weeks. The second would be the number of holidays. If the holidays are any less than 120, that's pretty much weekends and the public holidays in Japan. So you're going to want to look for something over 120. So look at that. If it's anything less than that, again, you probably want to be a little bit wary because they may require you to work on holidays, which is no good. Also, the amount of time off that you're given. It's fairly standard for Japanese companies to give people only 10 days a year off for sick leave and vacation. In general, I wouldn't work for a Japanese company. As a general statement, you're going to work more and get paid less than if you worked for a foreign company. It's just kind of a fact that Japanese companies almost insist on people working overtime, and that's a documented fact that they pay less. Obviously, there's some Japanese companies that don't do that, but as a general statement across the board, don't do that unless you really like working overtime. Look for Japanese language requirement. This can be JLPT, or I think another one I've seen recently is the CEFR. It's a European language requirement. They have it for more than just Japanese. They have it for all sorts of languages. But if there's no Japanese requirement in the job description, then they're probably not looking for foreign workers. This has just been my experience. I have never gotten a response from a job that didn't have a Japanese language requirement in the job description if the entire job description was in Japanese. Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about in finding jobs is recruiters. Be careful with recruiters. Always make sure to advocate for yourself and think about what is being said. In my most recent job, I got through a recruiter. Everything was fine until I decided to try and negotiate salary towards the end, and he was trying to close the job very aggressively. Always advocate for yourself, know what you're worth, and be willing to walk away if you don't get at least the bare minimum that you need. Don't take a job just because it sounds great for the experience. Make sure you're getting as much out of the job as they're gonna get from you. So changing jobs, did it take a long time? It took me about 3 months. 3 or 4 months, I can't remember exactly. It was either 3 or 4 months from the time when I decided I wanted to start looking for a job to getting a new job. It was definitely faster than when I got my first job because that took, I don't know, around 1.5 years. So when I first changed my job, I had to get a working visa because I was not on a working visa. I was on a dependent visa. This would be the same for anybody who's on a student visa. I was very lucky that my company, the company that hired me, did all of the work for me. However, if you don't feel comfortable doing the paperwork yourself, Loretta has a fantastic immigration lawyer. Hopefully she'll put the link in the description below. But yes, you will need to change your visa if you do not have a working visa. And even if you have a working visa, depending on the job you get, you may need a very specific type of visa. If it's, you know, there's like kind of a general working visa, and then there's more specific working visas depending on what you're doing. So when we talk about pay, so in a lot of, especially Japanese job descriptions, pay is listed. Another way that you can spot toxic jobs is if you see pay scales based on age. This is a very common practice in Japan, and it will show a traditional Japanese company because they do not care about performance. Everything's about seniority. Your pay, you'll get promoted when you reach a certain age, or people of certain age ranges will get more money than younger people. And that's just kind of how they've done it in the past. Japanese job descriptions will often list pay ranges. English job descriptions will not. You can negotiate pay, but if it's your first job, I don't think you're going to have a lot of success. You're going to have more success when you change jobs because you already have a job, and if you don't like the pay, you can just walk away. Very briefly, in a lot of other countries, specifically I know the US does this, I don't know about Europe, but a lot of places it's illegal to ask about your pay range. In Japan, it's not illegal, and it's very standard practice for recruiters or other job or internal talent sourcing agents to ask for your salary, and they will base your offer letter based on your previous salary. Unfortunately, it is that's just kind of how it's done in Japan, and there's not really a lot you can do about it. I don't think it's going to be a successful tactic to try and dodge that question. When switching jobs, I think somewhere between 10 and 15% is pretty standard for the the pay raise you're going to get. Well, I know that sounds like a lot of like doom and gloom and like, oh my God, it's so hard to do this. But these are just things that you should look at. I want you guys to protect yourself. I want you guys to have a good job searching experience. Anyway, guys, I know the job market's tough out there. Changing jobs, getting new jobs is hard, but good luck. And if you have any questions that I didn't cover in the video, comment below, and I'll see you guys in the comments. Bye.